Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. The mortgage papers hit my lap before I fully sat down. My name is Kayla and I was 26. My boyfriend closed the motel door and leaned against it. His mom sat on the edge of the bed and pushed the stack closer. I knew it was a trap before anyone spoke, but I still stayed. I highlighted where you sign. She tapped the top page with a quick rhythm. Her nails clicked on the paper and it made my stomach jump. Ignore the other stuff, the bank said this part is what matters. She smiled like this was casual, like she was asking for a ride. My fingers stayed open over my knees, useless and stiff. I looked down and saw my own name printed in bold letters. Not hers, not his, just mine under the word borrower. The payment amount sat under it like a dare from the page. I read the number once and my throat went dry. You ever feel your brain step back and watch you frozen? My boyfriend shifted behind me and the mattress dipped slightly. Babe, this is it, this fixes everything. His hand brushed my shoulder and stayed there, heavy and careful. He did not touch the papers, he did not reach for a pen. I felt like I was the only one actually sitting at that table. Why is only my name on here? I kept my voice slow. His mom pulled in a sharp breath and waved one hand. The bank said one person with clean credit is easier. She looked at me like I had already agreed and just forgot. If we put everyone on, it gets messy and they stall approval. That word clean hit like a slap I was not supposed to notice. I traced the edge of the first page with one finger. Do they have your info though, or just mine right now? I was trying to sound calm, not suspicious or rude. Inside I was already listing everything I own that could vanish. They have everything they need from us, trust me on that. She rubbed at her eyes and her voice shook at the edges. We have been through so much already, and this is our last shot. Her lip trembled and she looked at the ceiling like that helped. I knew the show was real and fake at the same time. My boyfriend finally moved around to face me from the side. He sat on the floor and rested his arms on my knees. Look at me, okay, just me right now. His eyes were wet but steady, almost rehearsed in their hurt. If you sign this, we are out of here next month. That word we sounded sweet and deadly in the same breath. I wanted that future, some quiet place without weekly checkouts. I also wanted my credit score to live past this year. I could feel both wants pulling in opposite directions already. It is scary how fast love gets used as a lever. What is the payment every month exactly, not approximately? I forced myself to scan down the paragraph he had ignored. His mom leaned in and jabbed at the line with a quick nod. See, totally normal, cheaper than rent for a place this size. The number did not feel normal with my salary, not even close. I tried to calculate it fast and my brain just buzzed. Rent, groceries, debt, everything piled up in one messy mental chart. If anything went wrong, that payment would chew through me. They would still have each other, I would just have collectors. The thought made my palms slick and my grip slip a little. Why did the bank not put you two as borrowers? I looked at her, then him, trading my eyes between them. He stared at his hands like they had answers printed there. She gave me a tight smile that did not reach anything. We have some past late stuff, it confuses the system and delays closing. Past late stuff sounded tiny next to the weight of that stack. I heard a small warning bell in my head start ringing. Not screaming yet, just a steady sound like distant traffic. You did tell them we would all live there though, right? I needed one honest detail, just one anchor point in the room. Of course, we told them it is a family home. She said family like it was handcuffs I should feel honored to wear. We already gave notice here, they think we are out next week. Her eyes filled again and this time a tear actually slipped. If this falls through, we are literally out on the street. My boyfriend squeezed my knee at that line and stared up. Please do not freak out, okay, we have a plan. He did not say what the plan was beyond me and ink. We just need you to believe in us for a little while. Funny how belief only matters when they need a signature. How fast did all this happen? When did you apply? I flipped another page, buying seconds, trying to breathe slower. His mom checked her phone like the timeline might be there. A few weeks ago, we did not want to jinx it. So they waited until the day of panic to loop me in. Closing is tomorrow morning, she added almost as an afterthought. The air around my head seemed to sharpen at that detail. Realtor says if we miss that window, we lose the house. She looked at me like I had personally scheduled the appointment. Everything is L. In that up, they just need you to stop hesitating. That word hesitating landed heavier than the stack on my legs. I was not signing a yearbook, I was signing my future away. I flipped back to the first page because my eyes kept blurring. Can I take this home tonight and think for a bit? Silence hit harder than any answer they could have given. His mom blinked twice and her nice tone snapped. We cannot take that risk, the bank needs docs locked in now. Her hands clamped together in her lap, knuckles sharp and pale. If you walk out with those pages, you might change your mind. I realized she was more scared of my doubt than the bank. My boyfriend shifted closer and rested his chin on my knee. Do you trust me? He whispered, soft enough to dodge his mom. The question hung there like I had never answered it before. I did trust him, just not like this, not with this cost. He watched my face like the whole motel depended on my next breath. You know we would do this for you if we could. He said it fast, like speed made it more believable. His mom nodded hard, jumping on the sentence before it cooled. If my credit was not wrecked from the divorce, I would sign. She was crying now, shoulders shaking, one hand on her chest. You know that feeling when someone cries near you on purpose? Part of you aches for them and part of you steps back. I reached toward a tissue box and then stopped halfway. If I comforted her, I knew it would trap me deeper. Instead, I wiped my own palms on my jeans and stared down. What happens if someone loses a job or gets sick suddenly? The question popped out before I could smooth it down. His mom made a sharp sound and shook her head hard. We cannot think like that, you have to think positive right now. People say that when they have no backup plan at all. He pulled his phone out and opened his banking app. Look, I have steady deposits, you know I show up for work. He held the screen up like proof and my chest clenched. The balance was not awful, but it was not home level either. It looked like survival money, not mortgage partner money. If you sign, we all pay this together and get through. His thumb kept tapping the same number on his screen. I can cover more once my raise hits in a few months. So now there was an invisible raise holding up this whole thing. My doubt spiked, then dipped, then tried to pass as caution. I thought about my own account and the tiny buffer there. Late fees, interest, credit cards, I still wrestled every month. One missed paycheck would shove me straight over the edge. If they missed a payment, the bank would not chase them first. My name would be the first one on every angry letter. Can I at least call the loan officer tonight for clarity? The room jumped at that word like I had dropped a plate. His mom grabbed her purse and hugged it close to her chest. They already went home, sweetie, they trust us to wrap this up. The way she said trust made my skin crawl in a very clear way. I just found out about this 1 hour ago, I reminded them. My voice shook and I hated that it showed, but it did. You both have known for weeks and I have had zero input. My boyfriend looked away at the wall, jaw working without sound. It hit me that I was the last piece, not the first choice. His mom leaned in so close I could see every line around her eyes. You love my son, we know that, we see it every day. She nodded like that settled the whole financial plan. Sometimes love means stepping up when things look scary and unfair. Translation in my head, love equals shutting up and signing fast. If I do this and something goes wrong, I am stuck. The word stuck came out rough and almost broke in half. Her face hardened in an instant, tears gone like they were never there. So you would rather we sleep in the car than risk a signature? She threw the word risk at me like it was an insult. Heat crawled up my neck and into my ears. I pictured them in a parking lot, cramped and cold, blaming me. I also pictured myself answering calls from unknown numbers for years. That second image scared me more, and I hated that truth. I could feel their expectations pressing down heavier than the papers. My boyfriend stood up and paced 2 steps, then 3, then back. Okay, can we just breathe, everybody, this is getting intense. He rubbed his hands over his face and dropped them fast. We are not trying to use you, we are trying to survive. That word use just sat there anyway, heavy and obvious between us. I want to help, I said, and I meant that part. But I cannot sign something this big with zero outside advice. His mom laughed once, sharp and tired, like she was done pretending. Oh right, go ask some stranger who does not even know us. She shook her head and looked away, eyes shiny and cold. That stranger understands the contract, I answered, heart pounding like a drum. I set the papers beside me instead of holding them on my lap. For the first time since I sat down, my legs felt like mine. His mom stared at the spot where the stack now rested alone. It looked small on the bed, but everything in the room leaned toward it. We have until tomorrow morning, my boyfriend said, voice low now. If you walk out that door without signing, we lose everything. He was not yelling, which somehow felt worse than if he did. It is already in motion, the lender, the seller, everyone expects us. Everyone except me, the person whose name sat in block letters. I picked up the pen and uncapped it just to see their faces. His mom inhaled like she had been underwater for 10 whole minutes. My boyfriend took one step closer, then stopped and watched my hand. The tip hovered a breath above the line with my printed name. I realized then that one small stroke could rearrange all our lives. I dropped the pen and grabbed my phone instead. While they argued softly outside the door, I dialed the lender's number from the top page. My thumb shook so hard I had to press it twice. If that call went badly, everything they asked me for changed. A bright recorded voice told me to hold, then repeated itself. I leaned against the bathroom wall and tried to breathe quietly. If they heard even one word, I would never get the truth. My chest felt tight and stubborn, like it did not want air. I kept replaying her line about clean credit in my head. She tossed it out like the most harmless detail in the world. It sat there now like a warning flare behind my eyes. I knew if I ignored it, I would only blame myself later. A real person finally picked up and gave a first name. I swallowed hard and forced my voice to come out steady. Hi, I'm calling about a mortgage file under my name. I read the loan number off the page with careful, slow breaths. The silence on his side felt like he was flipping through landmines. Okay, got it, papers rustled faintly through the speaker. His tone shifted just a little, like something clicked for him. And you are the primary borrower on this application, correct? The word primary hit differently when he said it so matter of fact. I knew if I agreed too fast, I was dead in the water. I just received documents today, my throat tightened around each word. I'm trying to understand what exactly I'm agreeing to sign. I heard a mouse click, more shuffling than a faint sigh. All right, he answered slower now, what do you want to know first? That question felt huge, but I grabbed the sharpest piece. Are there any other borrowers listed anywhere in that file? My voice dropped on the last word like I already knew. He paused long enough that I pulled the phone away to check. According to what I see, you are the only applicant. He cleared his throat, then added, their income is listed as occupants. My stomach lurched so hard I had to sit on the tub. Occupants sounded like people who could vanish without leaving a bill. I was told we were all doing this together, I managed slowly. Another pause, heavier this time, like he was shifting in his chair. Has anyone explained their previous mortgage history to you at all? That question made my skin prickle along the back of my neck. My first instinct was to say yes, just to sound mature. Instead, I forced the word no out, sharper than I meant. The pause on his side dragged, long enough to make my ears roar. Well, he started, there are some things you should probably be aware of. He did not rush in with details, which somehow scared me more. From what I see here, they lost a property a few years ago. He used the words loss and event instead of anything harsher. That record made underwriting very cautious with any new application involving them. He let that sentence hang, like he was checking if I would run. A property loss, how? I pushed, even though my pulse hammered wildly. He exhaled quietly, like he knew this call would not end nice. There was a foreclosure filed after repeated missed payments and collections. The air in the tiny bathroom felt suddenly thick and sticky. I stared at the door, half expecting it to open while he spoke. I made a small sound that did not feel like my voice. He continued anyway, each new word dropping heavier than the last. We only moved forward when we saw your credit profile come through. He added that my score pulled the entire file into approval range. So any risk here falls on you first if payments stop. For a second, I just listened to my own breathing, hard and shallow. They had given me zero hint of any of this earlier that night. No mention of losing a place, no mention of missed obligations. Just tears and guilt and the word family thrown like a weapon. The gap between their version and his version knocked the wind from me. I need to ask something clearly, I said, voice rough but steady. If they stop paying completely, what happens to me personally? His answer came fast this time, like he said it every day. The lender will pursue the borrower on record, which is you alone. He did not sugarcoat it, and I weirdly appreciated that straight line. He added that late marks would hit my report within a short window. Collections could follow if the account went bad and stayed unpaid. He threw in words like default, recovery, legal action, all very calm. Each one felt like a separate door closing behind my future plans. By the time he finished, my hands were slick enough to slip. I'm not sure I was told the whole story on their end. The sentence came out small, like I was almost embarrassed by it. He did not comment, just rustled papers again and cleared his throat. I cannot advise you on family dynamics, he said, almost apologetic. But I will say we rarely see first-time borrowers kept uninformed. That last part stung more than anything my boyfriend's mom had thrown. It sounded polite on the surface and brutal underneath the surface. I thanked him quickly before my voice cracked in his ear. He reminded me I was not required to sign anything at all. Then he mentioned a cancellation window I had not heard about yet. There is no penalty if you decline before closing actually occurs. He told me the planned signing time and location for the next day. Hearing the exact hour made it feel like a countdown in my ribs. He repeated that it was completely my choice whether to proceed. When I finally hung up, my fingers ached from gripping the phone. The second the call ended, a notification flashed across the screen. 3 missed messages from my boyfriend, all arriving while I talked. Where did you go? Everything okay? Mom is freaking out. Nothing from her directly now, which felt almost worse than before. I knew she was probably waiting to see which version of me returned. I wiped my palms on my jeans and unlocked the door slowly. He stood up from the chair outside like he had been on guard. Hey, you disappeared, he said, eyes searching my face for clues. I slipped past him and walked toward the bed without answering. If I spoke too soon, everything I learned would spill out wrong. You all right? He tried again, softer this time, hand reaching out. I pulled the papers into my lap and kept them closed. I just needed to breathe for a second, I muttered, looking down. That was true, just nowhere near the whole truth anymore. He waited, like he expected me to apologize for making them nervous. My phone buzzed again and I flipped it over to stop the sound. His mom watched us from the other side of the room, jaw tight. You scared me, she started, voice trembling in a very practiced way. I thought you left and we were going to lose everything. I could not unhear the word foreclosure now, no matter how she shook. I called the bank, I said before I could talk myself out. The temperature in the room changed without actually changing at all. Both of them froze, like someone hit a pause button on a remote. For what? She asked finally, eyes narrowing, hands curling at her sides. Her tone told me she already knew she would hate whatever came next. I wanted to understand what I'm actually signing onto tomorrow. I kept my gaze on the paperwork so I would not flinch. They mentioned a previous place that got taken back by the lender. Her mouth opened and shut once, like a fish yanked from water. My boyfriend stared at the wall, color draining from his face. That was different, she snapped, all the softness gone in an instant. We had a bad lawyer and an evil bank and crooked neighbors. Each excuse landed faster than the last, like she practiced them daily. It had nothing to do with us as people, we just got screwed. She looked offended that I would even repeat what the lender shared. I studied my boyfriend instead, because I needed to see his reaction. Did you know they lost a property because of missed payments? My voice came out low, almost calm, which shocked even me. He rubbed the bridge of his nose and let out a slow breath. They told me parts of it, he muttered, not all the ugly stuff. So they had edited the story for both of us in different ways. He got the PG version, I got nothing until I made that call. You didn't think I needed that information before they handed me forms. My question hung between us, heavy enough to bow the floor. He kept staring at the ground, toes tapping, avoiding everything above them. I was scared you'd walk if you heard every detail, he admitted. That is why I wanted you to see the dream first. He gestured vaguely at the imaginary house none of us owned yet. We can handle it this time, we know what went wrong before. Every promise sounded thinner now that I knew how much they hid. His mom jumped in again, louder, like volume could erase the past. We have grown since then, we learned, we would never repeat that situation. She tossed the word situation around like it was a parking ticket. The lender people always twist records to make regular folks look reckless. I remember the calm voice describing dates and filings, not opinions. I shifted the contract out of my lap and set it beside me. That tiny move made her flinch harder than any insult could. Why didn't you tell me about the cancellation option? My question was flat, but the edges of it felt sharp. She blinked quickly, then shrugged, then pressed her lips together. It just complicates things when too many choices get involved. Her answer came smooth and quick, like she believed that logic. We needed you focused on what we gain, not on backing out. So my ignorance was part of their plan, not an accident at all. Realizing that made something cold settle just under my ribs. My boyfriend noticed the change before I even spoke another word. Please don't spiral, he said quietly, sitting down across from me. He leaned forward, hands clasped, eyes wide with that familiar pleading. We finally have a shot at stability, I need you on my side. Every time he said we, I heard me now standing there alone. I thought about the lender's calm warning, about the history he described. He worked with numbers for a living, not with guilt and tears. Meanwhile, I had almost signed based only on crying and rushed timelines. That gap between logic and pressure suddenly felt dangerously huge. If this was just chapter 1 of their secrets, what came next? My phone started buzzing again before I finished that thought. First one ping. Then another. Then a whole line of alerts stacked across the screen. I knew before I looked that none of them were good. I flipped the phone and saw his mom's name filling the screen. Missed call. Voice memo. 4 new messages in a row with little red exclamation marks. My pulse jumped before I even opened the thread. Answer please. That call scared me, I thought you bilayed. We are hanging by a thread here. Do you want us sleeping in the parking lot tomorrow? I stared at that last line like it was written in fire. Another voice memo dropped in before I could react. I hit play with my thumb and held the phone close. Her breathing came loud first, already broken into hiccups. You don't want us on the street, do you? She dragged the word street out until it scraped across my nerves. She sniffed hard, then kept talking through little gasps. I packed our bags already, we literally have nowhere else lined up. My jaw clenched so tight my teeth hurt. You are our last chance, you are his last chance. That part landed deeper than anything the bank guy had said. Another text popped up over the audio while it played. If you love him, you will not leave him homeless. I paused the memo and just stared at that sentence. Love got turned into a yes or no question in 5 words. According to her, saying no meant I pushed them onto concrete. Wow, I said it out loud in the empty room. Not impressed, wow. More like that stunned sound you make when a car swerves. My boyfriend watched me from the chair, hands locked together. He knew she had started the campaign, he was just waiting now. What did she send? He leaned forward, eyes fixed on my face. I turned the screen toward him and let him read it. His shoulders slumped halfway through the line about the street. I told her to ease up, he muttered, fingers raking through his hair. Her anxiety goes 0 to 100 when she panics. That is not anxiety, I kept my voice low and sharp. That is straight-up emotional blackmail disguised as concern. The word blackmail dropped into the air between us and stayed there. He flinched slightly, but he did not argue with the label. That almost scared me more than if he had jumped to deny it. It is not fair to you, he admitted, looking at the floor. But she is terrified, and honestly so am I right now. He rubbed his thumb against his palm in a tight, fast motion. I keep picturing us back in the car with all our stuff. He did not have to say what picture he wanted in my head too. Here is what I keep picturing. I held the phone tighter. Collectors blowing up my number while everyone disappears again. My voice shook and I had to pause to steady it. I am sorry, but it is not my job to erase that outcome. He looked up at me like I had kicked over an altar. I am not asking you to erase it. His words came slow and careful. I am asking you to trust that we will not let it happen. He tried to catch my gaze with that soft puppy stare. You know me, you know I show up, I am not my parents. He pressed his hand over his chest, like swearing in a courtroom. I did know him. I also knew he had never handled something this huge. There is a gap between picking up extra shifts and owning a house. His optimism had always charmed me when we talked about tiny things. Now it felt like flimsy wrappy. Ng paper around a bomb. The screen lit again with another message from his mom. Tell her this is temporary, she can refinance us off later. That line actually made me laugh once, sharp and humorless. He read it and winced like someone slapped him. Okay, that is not how that works, I will give you that. She is promising my future to solve today, that is what that is. My chest tightened with a very specific new anger. None of you asked me what I needed out of this. I sounded calmer than I felt, which honestly scared me a little. He shifted in his seat like the cushion suddenly had nails. What do you need? He asked it quick like maybe speed helped. The question caught me off guard because no one had said it yet. I took a breath and forced myself to answer instead of shrug. I need to not be the only one legally nailed to this thing. As soon as I said it, I realized that was the core. He sat back and stared at the wall for a long second. Then he leaned forward again with that familiar hopeful tilt. What if we talk to the bank and add me later? He raised his eyebrows like he just invented fire in front of me. You sign now, we clean up my stuff, we fix it down the road. He did not realize he had just done the same thing as his mom. Kick every risk forward and let me hold it right now. Later never shows up for this kind of problem, I answered quietly. Later turns into years while my credit gets wrecked in the meantime. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it with a click of teeth. Another ping. Another message from her, longer this time. You are overthinking this, girl. Life is about faith, not numbers. I nearly threw the phone at the mattress when I read that. She had turned my caution into a character flaw in one line. I typed back before I could talk myself out of it. I have the right to look at numbers before I sign anything. My thumbs moved fast, almost faster than my brain. I am not comfortable taking this on by myself without security. I hesitated, then hit send, knowing it would light a fuse. The reply came almost instantly, like she had been waiting. Security is having a man who loves you and a family around you. My head throbbed at that. Love is collateral. Family as a financial product they wanted me to buy on credit. I locked the phone and put it face down beside me. If I keep reading those, I am going to snap. I looked at him instead, because he was the one I actually cared about. Do you really want your mother speaking for both of you like this? He hesitated long enough for the answer to show on his face. I do not want her freaking out, he said finally, voice tired. But I also cannot watch her drag suitcases back to the car either. He pressed his palms over his eyes, elbows on his knees. That image is going to replay in my head all night. He did not realize he had just handed me another guilt picture. I get that, I said, and I meant it in my bones. I am not heartless, this whole thing is ripping me apart. My throat burned and I had to swallow hard. But her fear does not magically make this smart, it just makes it loud. There. That was the closest I had come to saying no out loud. He lifted his head and studied me, almost clinically. So what are you saying exactly? That word exactly carried a challenge, like he dared me to be clear. You backing out, or are you just venting before you sign? The way he split it into two options told me a lot. He wanted me to rant and then fall in line later. Play the role of reluctant but loyal girlfriend and ink my name. My ribs felt tight, like my body knew this was a turning point. I am saying this is not a small favor, I answered slowly. This is a fork in my life, not a quick decision. His eyes darkened a little, like some switch flipped inside him. So my life is not also at that fork. He straightened, shoulders rigid, hands clasped again. You know what losing this place means for us, not just them. He emphasized us heavy, like he could press me into that word. I do know what it means, I said because I truly did. It means we stay in this weird limbo longer while we figure it out. I exhaled through my nose, trying to release some of the tension. It does not mean I should chain myself to a debt I never chose. The word chain hung there, a little too honest, a little too sharp. He flinched again when he heard it, then his face hardened. So you would rather protect your credit score than protect us? There it was. The sentence that would echo in my head for weeks later. He looked at me like he did not recognize the person in front of him. I would rather not destroy myself to fix a mess I did not make. My voice rose for the first time all night, just a notch. I am allowed to choose between drowning and swimming, even if you hate it. My hands shook in my lap and I curled them into fists. I knew I was talking as much to future me, as to him. The room went quiet except for traffic outside and someone laughing down the hall. He watched me like he was trying to decide if I was bluffing. You know what is wild, he said, suddenly calmer and almost cold. I genuinely thought you were ride or die about us. He nodded once, like he had just graded a test I did not study for. That hit harder than his mom's messages, I will not lie. He had turned being careful into failing some loyalty exam. A ride or die partner does not have to volunteer for financial ruin. I heard my own words and felt both proud and terrified. He stood so fast the chair scraped, a harsh, jagged sound. I need air, he muttered, grabbing his keys from the table. He walked to the door without looking back at me. For what it is worth, I thought you were different from everyone else. The door clicked shut behind him, quiet but final. His absence felt louder than any yelling could have. My phone vibrated again on the bed beside me. I did not touch it this time, I already knew who it was. In my head, I could picture a new text from her forming. Some fresh combination of guilt, tears, and holy duty to her son. I stared at the contract instead and knew I had reached a line. The first thing that woke me was my phone shaking nonstop. Not the alarm. Just vibration after vibration, stacked buzzes in my hand. For 1 second I hoped it was him texting that he'd cooled off. Then I saw the screen and my stomach twisted in a new way. A brand new group thread sat at the top of my messages. New icon. Title already set. Family housing emergency. Underneath, a little line said you were added. I hadn't touched anything. Somebody had pulled me in while I was asleep. That detail hit me harder than the actual name of the chat. They picked the time when I couldn't answer back. I opened it with my thumb even though I already felt sick. The first thing I saw was not a hello. It was a paragraph from his mom already in progress. And now she's thinking of backing out after everything we've done. My name sat right there in the middle, spelled correctly. I hadn't even typed in the thread yet, and I was already the villain. I scrolled up because of course I did. There it was. The moment she pulled everyone in. Adding everyone so you know what's happening with us and him. She tagged her sisters, 2 cousins, a Uncle D, and finally me. They all responded fast, one by one. What's going on? Did the house fall through? Is he okay? Nobody asked how I was, and honestly that told me plenty. Her next message punched right through the middle of the chat. The bank approved us thanks to her credit, but now she's hesitating. She dropped a crying emoji right next to my name. She doesn't want to sign because she's scared about some numbers. The way she said numbers made me sound childish, almost dumb. The replies came in quick, stacked like dominoes. Scared of what? A little responsibility. Girl, it's just paperwork, not a prison sentence. People these days only care about themselves. I watched strangers reduce my entire life to 4 angry lines. Then came the one that stuck in my brain like a splinter. A cousin I'd never met wrote, "So she's fine with y'all on the street." Another chimed in right under it. "Some people just hate poor folks but won't admit it." That last part hit me harder than it should have. I scrolled down and saw my own empty chat bubble. It showed my icon at the bottom with joined under it. No response yet. Just dead space. That blank gap had already turned into their proof. A screenshot appeared a second later, posted by one of the cousins. They decaptured the thread with my picture at the bottom. At the top, his mom's message about me thinking of backing out. Underneath, no reply from me yet, just silence. Caption over the screenshot, "Look, hasn't answered at all." I stared at that screenshot inside the actual thread and felt dizzy. They were literally screenshotting a conversation I was in for drama. Like I was content, not a person sitting in a cheap motel room. It felt surreal and also exactly like something this family would do. I hate that I'm not even surprised when I replay it now. My first instinct was to type a wall of text. Explain everything. The bank call. The foreclosure. All of it, blow the whole thing open. Instead, I watched my thumbs hover above the keyboard, useless. Anything I wrote would get clipped and thrown back at me. This was not a place for nuance or careful logic. This was a digital living room where I'd already been voted out. I deleted the half sentence I'd started and just watched. His name blinked into the group near the top of the screen. He was in the thread too. That realization came like a quick cold slap. An hour ago he told me he needed space, now he was here. Reading them talk about me like I wasn't in the next room. He hadn't written anything yet. No defense. No context. Just his little profile circle sitting silent in the list. For some reason, that quiet felt worse than the insults. I backed out and texted him privately instead. "Are you seeing this thread?" The typing dots popped up almost right away. "Yeah." One word, nothing else. I waited because I'm stupidly hopeful like that. Another message arrived. "They're just upset, don't take it so personal." That line almost made me laugh out loud. I could feel my heart pounding while my brain screamed, "Really?" I flipped back into the group chat because apparently I like pain. His mom was mid-speech now, firing off short, frantic lines. She gave us her word. We already packed everything, we have nowhere else. He finally had someone and now she's bailing when it counts. People piled on without stopping. Wow. I'd be embarrassed if I did that to my man. Imagine choosing a credit score over your partner's safety. That one stung because it was exactly what he'd thrown at me earlier. Then the line that really finished off any hope I had for them. One of the ants typed, "He can stay with us if she dumps y'all." The thread exploded with thumbs up and little hearts. They were already planning what happened after I refused to comply. The conversation had moved past persuading me and into replacing me. While they argued about whose couch he could use, I just sat there. It felt like watching my relationship get dismantled in real time. Piece by piece through cheap texts and emojis. No one asked if I wanted him on my couch either. I was just the bank account they were trying to win or lose. Another notification slid across the top of my screen. Different app. Different group. His mom again. Added you to prayer warriors for my son. I almost threw the phone when I saw that name. Curiosity won though, like it always does. I opened it and saw another chain already in motion. A forwarded block of text she'd written about me. She had basically drafted my villain origin monologue. "Please keep my boy in your thoughts," she wrote. "He chose a woman who loves money more than people. She's refusing to help us get a roof over our heads. She's letting fear guide her instead of love and faith. You know that feeling when your breath catches in your throat and stays there?" Someone responded right away. "We'll lift him up, he needs the strength to walk away." Another voice chimed in under that. "Sometimes God removes selfish people so blessings can come through." I was now a spiritual obstacle in a group I never asked to join. I exited that chat before my brain melted and went back to the first one. It was still going. New cousin. New comment. She probably thinks she's better because she has a job and we don't. I typed my first line in the main thread with fingers shaking. "I'm here, I just woke up and saw all of this." The typing indicator appeared right away from 3 different people. I kept going because backing down now would haunt me later. There's a lot being said about me that isn't true. The chat slowed for half a second like they were regrouping. His mom jumped on my message first. Oh good, you finally decided to speak. No, hi. No, are you okay? I forced myself not to respond to that tone and kept it simple. I never promised to sign anything without information. I asked questions because this is a serious commitment. I'm not okay with being the only one legally responsible. I hit send and watched my words drop into the snake pit. One cousin responded with a laughing reaction to my message. Here we go with the legal talk. A contract is just paper, girl. If you love him, you'll just do it and figure it out. I could almost hear her rolling her eyes through the screen. His mom followed that up fast, like we were in a tag team match. We're all in this together emotionally, that's what matters. If something happens, we'll work it out as a family. You're acting like we're strangers off the street. That last part stung because in some ways, yeah, they kind of were. I replied before I could overthink the wording. You're asking me to risk years of my life for a plan I didn't create. I didn't lose the last house. I didn't hide that from the bank. I'm finding it out at the last minute with everyone already packed. Silence. Not respectful silence. The kind where you can feel anger building behind screens. Then another message appeared from an aunt I'd never met in person. Wow, bringing up old mistakes like that is ugly. She added another line right under it. You really gonna throw their hardest moment back in their face? Where's your compassion? I stared at those words until they blurred and came back into focus. Apparently, truth itself was now considered cruelty. I glanced at the top of the thread and saw his name again. Still nothing from him. The little active now dot glowed beside his Ike. On. He was watching this happen in real time and not saying one word. That silence was louder than anything his relatives wrote. I toggled back to our private chat and typed fast. Say something, anything, this is your family, not mine. Dots appeared. They vanished. Then came one short line. They're just emotional, I don't want to start a bigger fight. There it was. The real reason he'd parked himself on the sidelines. Keeping peace in the group mattered more than defending me once. I felt something tilt inside me as I read it. I answered him with fingers that barely felt like part of my body. They are literally calling me a bigot and a gold digger. You could at least say I'm not those things. I waited, staring at the typing bubbles like they were a pulse line. His reply did not help. I know you're not, that should be enough. It was not enough. Not even close. Knowing in his head meant nothing when he left me exposed. In that moment, I realized his loyalty had a quiet setting. Back in the main thread, his mom dropped a new kind of bomb. Look at this, she wrote and attached a photo. The image loaded slowly on my screen. Suitcases lined up, plastic bags piled around them, his little brother slumped nearby. Caption above it, this is what her decision is doing to us. I felt my throat clamp shut again. Pictures always hit harder than words. They knew that. That's why she'd taken time to stage it before sending. Every piece of it said, look at the chaos this girl caused. Lord. Heartbreaking. She can really sleep at night knowing this. The comments decorated the photo like a twisted frame. My name attached to their struggle in every single sentence. I typed another answer I knew they'd twist anyway. I didn't ask you to pack everything before I even agreed. You made that choice. I'm not the one who gambled on my signature being guaranteed. My phone felt heavier in my hand with every word. A cousin jumped in almost before I finished. You talk like you're some big corporation just doing business. He is your partner, not some guy off the street. If I loved someone, I'd sign yesterday and figure out the rest. I wanted to ask her if she'd ever read a credit report in her life. His mom zeroed in on one single phrase from my text. You're right, you didn't ask us to pack. We started packing because my son said you were all in. So this betrayal is hitting him and us at the same time. She knew what that word betrayal would do in that audience. I looked at that line and felt something sour rise in my chest. He had told them I was all in without actually checking. Of course he had. Why get consent when you can get commitment by assumption? I realized I was the only one who hadn't made any promises. Another ping came from the prayer group I was still technically in. I opened it against my better judgment. They'd shared the photo with the suitcases there too now. Underneath, someone wrote, "Enemy attacks can look like a partner sometimes." I laughed once, a weird sharp sound that did not feel like me. Back in the first thread, my phone showed that someone was recording audio. A long little bar appeared. Then another. Finally, a voice memo from his mom dropped into the mix. I tapped it because at that point, why not? Her voice came through wet and raw. "You all know how hard we've fought to keep our family together. My baby finally had a woman who could help us up. Now she's backing out because of fear and selfishness and pride." I heard her sniff, then she landed the last hit. She told us to our faces she might leave us without a roof. No, I hadn't. But it didn't matter now that her version was recorded. That audio would get replayed in cars and kitchens for months. My actual words would never compete with that performance. When I went to type my response, my hands were shaking. I forced myself to slow down so I wouldn't sound unhinged. "Please stop lying about what I said," I wrote, short and clipped. I asked for time and information, I didn't threaten anybody. I hit send before I could try to soften it. One of the cousins instantly wrote back, ignoring my whole point. "Wow, calling your elder a liar now. You must feel real bold behind that phone." It was wild watching them move the target every time I clarified. They never answered what I actually wrote, just attacked the tone. His name finally popped up in the chat window. I held my breath without meaning to. "Everyone calm down," he wrote, two simple words that landed wrong. "She's just nervous, that's all." That was it. That was the grand defense. Not "you're misrepresenting her." Not "she has valid concerns." Just nervous, like I was a kid scared of thunder. His mom responded with a heart to his message and ignored mine. The hierarchy couldn't have been clearer if they'd drawn a chart. I stared at his two lines and felt something inside me sag. That tiny attempt at balance was all he'd offer. Not because he agreed with them completely. Because keeping them calm mattered more than making me feel safe. That realization still makes my chest tighten when I think about it. Another notification flashed across the screen from the prayer group. His mom had updated them again while we argued in the main chat. "Thank you for lifting us up," she wrote to her warriors. "He's trying to keep the peace, but she's resisting guidance. Please pray that he finds the strength to choose family over fear." I closed both chats at once and turned the screen off. The silence in the room suddenly felt weirdly loud. You know that moment when you realize nobody there is actually on your side? Not fully. Not in the way you thought. Sitting on that bed with my phone still warm in my hand, it hit me. If this was how they behaved when I hadn't signed yet. Imagine what they'd do once they had my name on a contract. I could see future versions of this same group chat clearly. Every late payment, every stress, all of it pinned on me in bright little bubbles. I booked the lawyer from my phone while the group chat still pinged. First result that mentioned free consultation, that was all I needed. I picked the earliest slot, hit confirm, and stared at the screen. If this guy told me I was overreacting, I'd probably cave. If he didn't, I knew I had no excuse left. The waiting room clock ticked louder than any notification on my phone. I kept my hands on the folder with the loan papers inside. My fingers had left a bend in the top page from gripping. I watched the door to the hallway like something scary might walk out. In a way it did, just wearing a tie and a calm expression. "Kayla." He said my name like he had already read it 10 times. He held the door and waited for me to stand. I took my folder and followed him down a narrow hallway. Every step felt like walking toward some verdict I'd asked for. His office was small but stacked with files and quiet energy. He gestured to the chair across from his desk and sat down. "Tell me what's going on," he said, leaning back a little. That was all the permission I needed to spill the whole mess. I dropped the folder on his desk and exhaled too fast. "These are mortgage documents," I started, voice already tighter than usual. They put only my name on everything and packed their bags already. I heard how wild it sounded out loud and kept going anyway. It's my boyfriend's family, they have nowhere to go tomorrow. I stopped there before I started apologizing for even existing. He flipped the folder open and scanned the first page. His eyes moved fast, like he'd seen 1,000 near-identical nightmares. "You're the only borrower listed," he said, tapping the top section. His finger paused on my printed information, then slid lower. "They're not on here at all as co-owners or co-signers." I nodded once, jaw tight. They told me the bank just needed one person with clean history. The word felt childish now after hearing it so many times. They want to move in with me, but never actually share the responsibility. Even saying that made my chest heat up all over again. He turned a few more pages, lips pressed together in a thin line. "Have you signed any version of this yet at a closing table?" I shook my head hard enough that my ponytail smacked my neck. "Just the pre-approval stuff before this, nothing with this number yet." He relaxed a fraction, like that answer had bought me time. "Good," he said. "That means you still have all the power here." Those words hit me so strangely that I almost laughed. Because nothing about the last 24 hours had felt like power. It had felt like being trapped in someone else's fire drill. He slid the packet back toward himself and kept reading. "Payment amount is here, fixed rate, standard term." He pointed to another paragraph and looked up at me again. "You understand this is entirely your debt if you sign tomorrow." My throat tried to close at that word entirely. "I know that on paper," I answered, rubbing my fingers together. "But everyone keeps acting like we're all doing it together spiritually." I shrugged one shoulder because I didn't know how else to explain. "They say we'll figure it out as a family if anything happens." I actually used the air quotes, which tells you my mental state. He gave a quick short breath that was not quite a laugh. "Families are not on the hook when the lender comes knocking." He pointed at my name again for emphasis. "The bank doesn't care about group chats or verbal promises or tears. They care about this signature right here and the payment every month." I swallowed hard and nodded. "Can you tell me what happens to me if it goes bad?" I wanted it laid out, no fluff, no sugar, just straight. Like worst case, they stop paying and disappear on me completely. Saying it out loud made my paw LMS slick all over again. He sat forward, elbows on the desk, voice a little more serious. "If these payments fall behind, your record takes the first hit. Late marks show up fairly quickly in this kind of account. If the delinquency continues, they can start collection efforts and lawsuits. Your wages, your future borrowing options, all of that gets choked." The way he said choked made my stomach twist in an ugly way. I pictured my paycheck sliced apart before I even saw it. I pictured some stranger deciding how much I got to keep. All because I couldn't handle saying no to one desperate family. That image didn't match the girl I wanted to be anymore. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling for a second. Honestly, I keep thinking I'm being too dramatic about this. Like maybe it's just fear and I should just suck it up. My eyes burned and I blinked hard so they wouldn't overflow. "I need you to tell me if I'm blowing this out of proportion." He watched me for a moment, really looked, not just surface level. "I talk to people all week who sign without reading anything." He tapped the folder lightly with the back of his hand. "They walk in here later crying after everything already fell apart. You're here before signing, that is the opposite of dramatic." That landed deeper than any pep talk from friends ever had. He turned another page and pointed to a paragraph near the bottom. "See this?" he asked and waited until I leaned forward. "This states they can pursue deficiency if the property is foreclosed. In plain language, if the sale doesn't cover the balance, they chase you." A weird cold calm crawled over my neck as he spoke. "So they could take the place and still want more from me." My voice came out quieter, like the volume got turned down. "Yes," he confirmed. "Depending on how things play out, that is absolutely possible." I pressed my nails into my palm until it hurt in a sharp way. "And their past with losing a house doesn't scare the bank anymore." He gave a short shake of his head. "The bank is fine with risk as long as it's yours, not theirs. That's what your strong history does here, it cushions them." That phrase stuck. It cushions them. My entire good record turned into padding for a company and a family. Not shield for me, comfort for them. Something about that flipped a switch I'd been trying to ignore. Let me ask this bluntly, I said, voice suddenly steadier. If your own kid brought you this exact scenario, what would you say? He didn't even need time to think about it. I'd tell her to walk out of that closing and never look back. He raised his eyebrows slightly. And I'd help her move her stuff while she cried about it. Hearing it framed like that knocked the breath out of me. Because that's exactly what I'd tell a friend in my position. I just hadn't been willing to hold myself to the same rule. With him saying it, I couldn't pretend it was just panic anymore. It sounded like simple common sense put in plain language. I feel awful, I admitted, finally letting the words out. They have bags packed and nowhere lined up for tomorrow. They're sending photos and group messages and calling me heartless. I laughed once, sharp and weak. You'd think I'm personally kicking them onto a sidewalk. He listened, hands folded, face calm but not cold. I'm not judging the feelings, he said, voice even and firm. Desperation makes people say intense things, sometimes ugly things. But your guilt does not magically turn this into a safe contract. That's the part people mix up when family is involved. I keep hearing that if I loved him, I'd just sign. The words felt bitter in my mouth as I said them. His relatives say they would do it without blinking for their partners. They act like being careful equals not caring about him at all. That logic had messed me up more than anything else. He leaned forward again, expression more direct now. The question is not whether you love your boyfriend. The question is whether his entire support system respects your boundaries. From what you describe, they're willing to crush those boundaries for convenience. Love is not supposed to demand blind sacrifice to fix someone else's mistakes. That last sentence sat heavy between us for a moment. Because deep down, I already knew he was right about that. I just hadn't had the courage to say it out loud until now. Hearing it from an outsider made it feel real instead of petty. Like I wasn't just being sensitive. I was being targeted. I rubbed my forehead and let out a long, slow breath. You haven't even heard the half of the pressure tactics. There are prayer chats, pity photos, people volunteering their couches for him. They're lining up his landing spots like I'm already gone. They're acting like this is some test of my worth. He tilted his head slightly, eyes narrowing just a bit. So they're already PL. Anning life after you if you say no. I nodded, throat tightening again. Then they're gambling with the relationship too, not just the house. He let that sink in before adding the next part. Here's something I want you to take seriously. You are allowed to end a relationship over money choices. Especially ones this big, especially when you're ignored or cornered. It doesn't make you shallow, it means you understand consequences. Plenty of marriages collapse because people ignored this stuff. Hearing the word marriages made my chest clench even more. Because yeah, I'd pictured that with my boyfriend before this storm. Not a fairy tale, just a stable shared life down the line. Now I was sitting across from a stranger asking if leaving was smart. That shift alone told me how far things had gone off track. I looked at the folder and then back at him. Explain the closing day part one more time, I requested quietly. In real words, so I can't pretend I misunderstood later. He nodded and tapped the signature section on the main page. If you show up and sign, you own this mess. If you choose not to attend, they cannot force you there. He paused to make sure I followed that. They might yell, they might threaten, they might throw insults. But legally, no one can make you sign against your will. You still have the right to walk away from the table. I swallowed that down, half relief, half fear. So if I call the lender and say I'm backing out, I asked. Does anything bad happen to me for doing that? He shook his head once. You may burn bridges with that specific deal, but not your life. For this contract, the most important line is the one you haven't signed. He moved the packet a little closer to me again. I'd suggest you send an email tonight stating you're not proceeding. Then call in the morning as well, in case the message is ignored. Keep copies in case anyone tries to muddy the story later. The thought of hitting send on that email made my pulse jump. Because that would be the moment there was no wiggle room left. Right now, I still lived in the land of maybe. Once I wrote it down, I'd chosen a side. And I knew exactly how his family would react. Tell me if this is cruel, I said, staring at my hands. If I back out now, they probably end up in a car again. That image will stay stuck in my head no matter what you say. He let a beat pass before answering, which I honestly respected. I'm not going to pretend that outcome isn't painful, he admitted. But ask yourself this, he continued, voice firm but not harsh. Is it less cruel to strap yourself to a loan you cannot manage? To carry their past mistakes on your back for decades? To lose your own stability while trying to rescue theirs? Pain now or disaster later, those are not equal things. That was the moment something in me really cracked. You ever have that instant where your excuses just finally collapse? Mine did right there at that desk, one after another. All the lines I'd fed myself about love and sacrifice just dissolved. What stayed standing was simple terror and one clear fact. I don't trust them with my entire future, I whispered. It came out before I planned it, almost like a confession. He nodded slowly, like that was the sentence he'd been waiting for. That's your answer then, he said. You cannot sign for people you don't trust to protect you. I sat with that for a while, eyes burning, heart pounding. Because once you say it that plainly, you can't unsay it. You can't go back to pretending it's just nerves or confusion. It becomes a line you either stand on or step over. And you know exactly which choice belongs to you. He pushed a small notepad across the desk toward me. I'm going to write a couple of points down, he said. So when the emotions hit later, you have something rational to hold. He jotted quick bullet lines in crisp handwriting. Not on the loan, not married, not informed, not obligated. I stared at those 4 sentences like they were an exit door. They were so basic, so blunt, so hard to argue against. Part of me wanted to send a photo to the group chat. Just drop it in there and walk away from the explosion. But I knew they'd just call the lawyer greedy and move on. Last thing, he added, sliding his card on top of the notepad. If they try to bully you tomorrow, you can blame me. He gave a small half smile that didn't feel fake. Tell them your attorney strongly advised against it and you're following counsel. Sometimes people back off faster when they hear the word attorney. I actually laughed, a real short laugh at that suggestion. You sure you're okay being the villain in their story? He shrugged one shoulder, relaxed and unbothered. I'm already the villain in plenty of stories like this, he said. I'd rather that than watch another young woman get wrecked. That broke me a little in a different way, because I suddenly realized this scenario was not rare for him. I wasn't special. I was another person sitting in that chair with shaking hands. That made me feel sad and weirdly a bit less alone. He stood and I followed, clutching the folder to my chest. At the door, he paused and looked at me one more time. You're not crazy, he said, voice low and steady. You're not evil for protecting yourself, remember that when the messages start. They're going to scream louder when you pull the plug. I nodded, throat tight, eyes stinging, mind racing ahead. Because I knew he was right about the screaming part. They hadn't even heard no yet, and they were already on attack mode. Walking out of that office meant choosing to trigger all of it. But staying would mean choosing to destroy myself slowly instead. As soon as I stepped outside, my phone lit up again. Multiple missed calls from my boyfriend. More texts from his mom. A new ping from the prayer group. It felt like standing at the end of a long tunnel with sirens. I sat in my car and didn't turn the engine on yet. I placed the folder on the passenger seat like a person. Then I opened my email app with fingers that barely felt solid. Subject line regarding tomorrow's closing. Body empty, waiting for the sentence that would start the war. For a long minute, I just stared at the blinking cursor. Every guilt line his family had thrown at me replayed in my mind. Every warning line from the lawyer lined up right beside them. 2 competing scripts, one begging, one brutally honest. I realized I finally had to pick which one I believed in more. I typed the first words slowly so I wouldn't chicken out halfway. I am writing to confirm that I will not be proceeding. Seeing it in black and white made my chest feel both tight and light. I did not hit send yet, not in that moment. I just let the sentence sit there and knew that once I sent it, nothing would look the same again. I hit send before I could think of another excuse. The email left my outbox and my chest clenched hard. For a second, I wanted to grab it back through the screen. Then a reply popped up faster than I expected. Request received. Closing will not proceed without your signature. It was so short that it almost felt rude. It also meant the whole thing was officially dead. No more maybe, no more we'll see tomorrow. Just no. Written down, logged, and out of my hands. My phone lit up with his name 2 seconds later. Incoming call vibrating so hard the whole seat buzzed. I watched it ring until it went to voicemail. Another call came in right on top of it. Then a third one back to back like sirens. I let the fourth one connect and lifted it slowly. Did you do something? He asked, not even saying hello. His breathing sounded uneven, like he'd been pacing. I stared at my own reflection in the dark screen. Yeah, I answered. I told them I'm not going through with it. Silence. Not the confused kind, the stunned kind. You canceled the entire deal without talking to me first. His voice cracked on the last word, anger and panic mixing. I closed my eyes for a second and held the phone tighter. I tried talking, I answered, keeping my tone low and steady. In that room, in those messages, you heard all of it. You knew what I was leaning toward when I walked out. I couldn't keep living in that in-between space forever. I chose not to wreck my life. He let out a rough sound that was half laugh, half breath. Do you understand what you just did to us? To my mom and my brother and everything we lined up. We were counting on you showing up this morning. You pulled the plug and didn't even let us plead our case. You pled it for 2 days straight, I shot back, pulse racing. In person, in texts, in that giant thread you all made. In that other chat where I magically turned into a villain. I heard everything anybody had to say already. Nothing new was coming besides more pressure. He went quiet again and then spoke slower. Can you come back here? He asked, voice low and tight. We're in the lobby, Mom wants to talk in person. She says this can still be fixed if we act fast. She thinks you can call and undo it before they close. That we again. Even now, woven into every sentence like a net. There was a part of me that wanted to stay far away. Just let the email stand and block the next round. But another part needed to look them in the face. Fine, I said, surprising both of us. I'll come down, I'm not changing my answer though. He exhaled sharp through his teeth. Just come, he said, then the call ended. No goodbye, no please, just a command rattling in my ear. The motel lobby looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I'd just outgrown the whole scene overnight. His mom sat near the front counter, hands folded stiff. Her bags clustered beside her chair like props. My boyfriend. Andy stood by the door, tapping his foot. He watched me cross the room, eyes locked on mine. No smile, no softening, just this guarded, wounded look. His mom sat up straighter the second I stopped near them. You emailed the bank, she said, not bothering to hide the bite. You really went above our heads like that. I didn't go above anyone, I answered, meeting her stare. They're my lenders because you used my history to get approval. I'm allowed to communicate with them about my own risk. My voice shook on risk, but I didn't let it break. Her mouth tightened, then she looked at her son like, see. Sit down, she ordered, gesturing to the chair across from her. I'm not going to cause a scene standing in front of everyone. She glanced toward the clerk at the front like she had an audience. I lowered myself into the chair because my legs already trembled. Saying no is one thing in your head, another thing out loud. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, eyes sharp and glossy. Here's what's going to happen, she started, voice controlled and cold. You're going to call them back and say you were hasty. You're going to tell them you changed your mind this morning. You're going to fix what you messed up before the seller walks. I actually laughed, short and humorless, before I could stop it. She blinked like I'd slapped her. I'm not doing that, I said, each word clean and separate. I gave them my answer and I'm not reversing it. I won't sign that loan, I'm done pretending I might. My boyfriend ran a hand over his face, eyes squeezed shut. Don't answer so fast, he muttered, pacing one short line. You haven't even heard the updated plan. He stopped moving and spread his arms like he had a presentation. We figured out a way to make this safer for you. I turned toward him despite myself. What plan? I asked, though I already knew it was nothing real. He latched onto the question like a lifeline. Mom's sister said we can rent her extra room cheap for a while. Gives us breathing room so we don't miss any early payments. His mom jumped back in before I could respond. And once we show a year of good behavior, you can relax. You'll see we're not the people that bank file makes us look like. We'll refinance down the line and take it off your shoulders. That's our promise as a family that loves you. There it was again. Promises that lived somewhere vague in the far future. All resting on a foundation they'd already cracked once before. No, I said again, quieter but even more final. I'm not building my life on maybes and verbal pledges. Her face hardened, tears gone in an instant. You dragged us through this whole process just to abandon us now. You let us rely on you and then just yanked it away. You should have said no from the beginning if you were this cold. The words landed like stones, one by one, heavy and deliberate. I didn't know the whole story at the beginning, I reminded her. You made sure I didn't, that was your choice, not mine. I kept my gaze steady even as my throat tightened. The foreclosure, the missed payments, all of that came out later. You gambled on my ignorance and now you're mad it failed. My boyfriend slammed his hand softly against the door frame. Stop talking like she tricked you into some scam, he snapped. We just needed help, that's all this was, help. He turned to me, eyes bright, almost glassy. You were the one person who could actually change our situation. I looked up at him and felt my heart pull in two directions. I get needing help, I said, chest burning, voice rough. I've needed help in my life too, I'm not blind to it. But this isn't spotting somebody rent or groceries. This is signing up to take the hit for another disaster. He shook his head slowly, like he couldn't believe my words. You think so little of me that you're already predicting failure. You really see me as just another Bill Dodger like them. That hurt because it wasn't entirely wrong or entirely right. I could feel my chest knot up with mixed guilt and stubbornness. I think you're stuck in their system so deep you can't see it, I answered. You're loyal to them and I understand that, I really do. But you let them turn me into an ATM with feelings. And you stood back while they trashed me in front of everyone. I saw him flinch just slightly when I said that. His mom huffed, leaning back, arms crossed tight. Of course you're going to exaggerate what happened in that chat. We were venting in private because we were terrified. Families do that when everything's hanging by a thread. You're acting like we committed some crime against you. You added me to those threads, I reminded her, eyebrows lifted. You screenshotted my silence like proof of my guilt. You dragged strangers into this to gang up on me. So no, that wasn't private venting, that was a campaign. A campaign to control me through shame. Her expression twisted into something sharp and bitter. You always were dramatic, she sneered, flicking her hand. Every little thing becomes a personal attack in your mind. You should hear how selfish you sound right now. You'd rather protect your precious accounts than protect your man. That line almost broke me. It also finally pushed me into a different gear. My precious accounts are what keep me off the floor, I shot back. I don't have parents with spare rooms or secret backup plans. If I go down alone, you all still have each other. My boyfriend stared at the lobby carpet like it held answers. Can we talk outside for a second? He asked quietly, not looking up. He opened the door and stepped out to the walkway. I followed because this was the last shot at any clarity. My hand shook at my sides as the door closed behind us. The air outside hit cooler against my hot face. He shoved his hands into his pockets and stared at the parking lot. So that's it, he said, still not looking at me. You're really walking away from this after everything. He finally turned and his eyes looked tired and older. I'm walking away from that loan, I corrected, lifting my chin. What happens after that is up to both of us. I'm not the one saying I can only love you if you sign. I came here even after sending that email, that says something. I didn't ghost you, I stood here and said it to your face. He let out a long breath that shook a little at the end. You know they're going to be in the car tonight. His voice dropped low, almost a whisper. You know my little brother is going to be in the back seat. You're okay carrying that image around for the rest of your life? That question slid right under my skin in the worst way. No, I said honestly, because lying would have tasted worse. I'm not okay with that, it hurts like hell to picture. But I'm also not okay signing up to be their safety net forever. I can't trade my entire future just to avoid one horrible night. He looked away again, jaw tight, eyes blinking fast. So you're choosing yourself, he said finally, like it was a verdict. He nodded once, slow, like he'd reached his own conclusion. I guess I misjudged what kind of partner you are. His words were soft, but they hit harder than yelling. I felt my eyes sting but forced my voice to stay even. I'm choosing myself for once, I said, not backing down. I've chosen everyone else's comfort for a very long time. It never once saved me when things went bad. So yeah, I'm choosing me, and I know you hate it. He laughed once, short and mean, eyes still shiny. You're going to find out one day what you threw away. He stepped back toward the door, hand on the handle. There aren't many people willing to go all in like I was. He paused, then tossed the last line over his shoulder. And when the next guy asks you to be there for him, good luck. The door shut between us before I could answer. I stood there staring at the blank metal for a long second. My heart felt bruised, my stomach felt punched, my head throbbed. I also felt this small clear strip of relief under all that pain. I walked back inside because I still needed one last thing done. His mom watched me approach like I was something under her shoe. Well, she snapped, did he finally talk some sense into you? I didn't bother to sit this time. I just reached into my bag. The unsigned loan packet slid out, edges slightly crumpled. I placed it on the small lobby table between us. Pushed it across until it bumped against her folded hands. I'm not signing now or ever, I said calmly. You can keep those or shred them, they're not my problem. She stared at the stack for a moment like it might explode. Then her eyes snapped up to mine, blazing. You used him, she spat, voice loud enough to turn heads. You used us, milked his love, then bylaid when things got real. You are not wife material, you're a parasite with good credit. That one actually made my cheeks burn. I could feel heat climb all the way to my ears. I also felt something inside me go strangely still. I straightened up and let the worst of it pass through me. When I answered, my voice sounded almost shockingly even. You don't get to define my worth because I refused your contract. You don't get to decide who deserves commitment and who doesn't. I said no to being your unpaid insurance policy, that's all. If that makes me trash in your story, so be it. I'd rather be trash with options than loyal and ruined. The front desk clerk glanced over, clearly following more than he wanted. His mom noticed and lowered her volume just enough to avoid drama. I hope you never need anyone and get turned away like this, she hissed. I hope one day you see what it feels like to be abandoned. She grabbed the loan papers with shaky fingers and umpled the corner. Trust me, I answered quietly, I already know what that feels like. I took a small step back, giving myself space to breathe. This time I didn't move closer again. Her expression shifted for half a heartbeat at that comment. Then it snapped back to pure fury like she'd slammed a door inside. You're dead to this family, she said, pointing at the exit. Don't call, don't text, don't come around wondering what happened. We'll figure it out without you, like we did before you came. She lifted her chin high, like she'd just delivered a noble curse. That boy of mine will find a real partner, not a coward. The words stung, of course they did. But something about the phrase, we'll figure it out, sounded familiar. She said it about the house, the plan, the money. They always figured things out after blowing everything up. Maybe they actually would. Maybe they wouldn't. Either way, it couldn't rest on my name. I turned without answering and walked toward the doors. My legs felt unsteady, but they did what I asked. Each step away from that lobby felt weirdly heavy and light together. My phone vibrated in my pocket nonstop as I moved. I didn't need to look to know what those messages were. Outside, the sun hit my face and I had to squint. The parking lot looked exactly the same as yesterday. Their car sat there stuffed with bags and plastic containers. His little brother sat in the front seat with headphones on. He glanced up once as I passed and then looked away. I wanted to walk over, say something kind, hug him goodbye. Explain that adults make messy choices and none of this was his fault. Tell him I cared about him even if I was leaving this chaos. But there was no version of that talk that wouldn't be twisted later. So I kept moving, and that choice still hurts a little when I remember it. My own car waited near the far corner of the lot. I climbed in, shut the door, and rested my head on the wheel. For a second I thought I might actually get sick. Tears finally came then, hot and embarrassing and unstoppable. Nobody could see me now though, and that helped. While I sat there shaking, my phone kept buzzing against my leg. New texts from him stacked over old ones. One said, "So that's how much we meant to you, got it." Another, "Don't bother reaching out when you change your mind." "No, I love you." "No, I'm hurt but I get it." Just anger and finality. I scrolled through without answering any of them. Then I opened the email from the lender one more time. "Closing canceled per your request," it repeated, simple and cold. "Thank you for notifying us in advance." I read it twice, then 3 times until my breathing slowed. Here's the part that still messes with me. In that exact moment, with my eyes burning and my stomach twisted, I felt the tiniest flicker of something like peace under all the chaos. Not happiness, not even relief, just this small grounded feeling. Like my feet were finally on my own floor, not theirs. I started the engine and pulled out of the lot. In the rearview mirror, the motel shrank fast behind me. Their car stayed parked, still loaded, still waiting on their next move. I had no idea where they'd end up that night. I still don't know now. What I do know is this. If I had turned around, walked back in, picked up that pen. Every time a bill got missed, every time a fight broke out. Every message from a collector, every hit to my report. I'd only have one person to blame, and it wouldn't be his mom. I drove toward my place with my phone on silent. No music, no calls, just the hum of the road. My heart hurt in a deep way that lasted for weeks. I questioned myself 100 times after that day. But I never once wished my name was on that mortgage.